Will snapped in Ambassador Kale's fingers when the human delegate stood up. Empress Ylvana, of the Sytheri Dominion, watched from her throne as the creature, barely taller than a Sytheri adolescent, cleared his throat and addressed the Grand Assembly without permission. "I will not sign," said Daniel Mercer. Silence. The kind that preceded executions. Ylvana's 4 advisors exchanged glances. The succession compact required signatures from all 7 galactic representatives to validate a new monarch's claim. 6 had signed. The human was the 7th, a formality, everyone assumed. Humanity's signature carried no weight. They controlled 3 planets. The Sytheri commanded 900. "You misunderstand your role here," Lord Vathis said, his silver skin rippling with barely contained contempt. "Your signature is ceremonial, a courtesy we extend to emerging species." Daniel didn't flinch. "Then you won't mind if I withhold it." Ylvana studied him. She had read the briefings on humans, short-lived, emotionally volatile, technologically primitive. This one wore a simple dark suit among ambassadors draped in ceremonial armor and living metals. His hair was gray at the temples. His eyes carried something she recognized but couldn't name. "Speak your objection," she commanded. Her advisors stiffened. One did not invite objections during a coronation ratification. One crushed them. Daniel turned to face her directly, another breach of protocol that made Lord Vathis reach for his ceremonial blade. 3 years ago, the Sytheri Dominion classified humanity as a provisional species under Edict 447. We cannot own property beyond our home system. We cannot serve in mixed military units. We cannot marry outside our kind. He paused. "Your crown requires my signature, Empress. But your laws say my signature is worth less than the ink it's written with. You dare," Vathis began. "I dare." Daniel's voice was quiet, but didn't waver. "If my signature matters today, it matters every day. I will sign your compact. But I have a condition." Ylvana raised one hand, silencing her advisor. Something flickered in her chest, not anger, but curiosity. Perhaps even respect. No one had spoken to her like this since her father's death. No one had looked at her as anything other than a throne to be claimed or a threat to be neutralized. "Name it," she said. "Full personhood status for humans within the Dominion. Not today. Not tomorrow. But a formal review process within 1 solar year, with my people permitted to present evidence of our worth." Lord Vathis laughed. "You would bargain for your entire species with a single signature on a ceremonial document? Yes?" Daniel met the Sytheri Lord's eyes. "Because that's what my signature is worth to you today. I'm simply asking you to remember that worth tomorrow." Ylvana felt the weight of her crown, not the physical one, which she had not yet received, but the invisible one that had pressed down on her since her mother's assassination 6 months. Council had chosen her not for her wisdom or strength, but because she was controllable. Young, unmarried, without allies. And now this human, this insignificant creature from an insignificant world, was offering her something no Sytheri had, a choice that was entirely her own. "The assembly will recess," she announced. "I will speak with the human delegate. Alone." The chamber erupted. Vathis stepped forward. "Empress, this is unprecedented. Many things will be unprecedented in my reign, Lord Vathis." She descended from her throne, her ceremonial robes trailing behind her like captured starlight. "Beginning now." She walked past her advisors, past the shocked ambassadors, and stopped before Daniel Mercer. Up close she could see the lines around his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands that he controlled through sheer will. "Follow me," she said. He did. The private garden had been her mother's sanctuary. Ylvana had not entered it since the funeral. The bioluminescent flowers still bloomed in their programmed patterns, indifferent to grief. "You're either very brave or very foolish," she said, her back to him as she studied a cluster of night-blooming crystals. "I've been called both. Which do you believe?" "Neither." She heard him move closer, though he maintained a respectful distance. "I'm just tired, Empress." She turned. In the soft light his face looked older. Worn. Ancient. "Tired of what? Of being invisible. Of my people being invisible." He gestured vaguely at the palace around them. 300 humans live in this city. They clean your floors. They maintain your atmospheric processors. They tutor your children in the mathematics we invented. And none of them can look a Sytheri in the eye without risking punishment for insolence. You looked at Lord Vathis. I did. You looked at me. I am looking at you now. Ylvana felt something shift in her chest. She was accustomed to averted gazes, to the performance of submission that her court demanded. Even her late betrothed, selected by the council for his bloodline, had never truly seen her. He had seen the throne, the alliance, the political advantage. "Why did you really refuse to sign?" she asked. "The truth." Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I had a daughter. She was 7 when she died. A fever that Sytheri medicine could have cured in minutes. But the medical station refused to treat her because she was human, and I couldn't afford the non-citizen surcharge. The words hung in the air between them. She was everything, he continued. My wife left after. Couldn't look at me without seeing her. I stayed because I made a promise to my daughter as she died. I told her that someday humans would matter. That her death would matter. Ylvana had been trained since birth to suppress emotion. Sytheri did not weep. Sytheri did not comfort. Sytheri endured. But she found herself stepping closer to this human. This father who had buried his child in foreign soil. What was her name? Lily, Ylvana repeated. The word felt strange in her mouth. Soft, vulnerable. You would risk your life for her memory. I would risk everything for her memory. Then we understand each other. Ylvana folded her hands, a gesture of formal decision. My mother was not assassinated by rebels, as the official record states. She was poisoned by Lord Vathis and 3 council members who feared her reforms. I have spent 6 months pretending not to know this, waiting for an opportunity to act without being destroyed. Daniel's eyes widened. Why are you telling me this? Because you have nothing to gain by betraying me, and everything to lose. And because, she hesitated. Because you are the first person since her death who has spoken to me as if my words mattered more than my crown. They do, perhaps. To the Sytheri I am a symbol. A vessel. A means to an end. Then change what you symbolize. Ylvana almost laughed. You make it sound simple. I make it sound necessary. Daniel took a breath. Sign a secret addendum to the compact. Hidden within the ceremonial language. Clause that triggers a full legal review of all provisional species classifications upon your official coronation. By the time Vathis realizes what happened, it will be law. You've thought about this. For 3 years. Every night since Lily died. Ylvana studied him, this small, fragile, fierce creature who had walked into the heart of an empire and demanded to be seen. If I do this, she said slowly, Vathis will eventually discover my involvement. He will move against me. Then don't let him be in a position to move. You're suggesting I remove him? I'm suggesting you build alliances he can't touch. Starting with humanity. Daniel met her gaze. We're small, Empress. Weak by your standards. But we're everywhere. We in your floors and maintain your systems and tutor your children. We see everything. We hear everything. And we remember. You're offering me a network of spies. I'm offering you friends. He smiled, and for a moment the grief in his eyes lifted. Something tells me you could use a few. Ylvana felt the corner of her mouth twitch. When had she last smiled? She couldn't remember. You are a strange creature, Daniel Mercer, so I've been told. I have a condition of my own, she said. If I do this, if I risk my throne and possibly my life for your people, you will remain here, in the palace, as my cultural advisor. Advisor, someone must ensure the review process proceeds fairly. And someone must remind me why I'm fighting when the council makes my life unbearable. She paused. You said you were tired. So am I. Perhaps we can be tired together. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand, a human gesture of agreement she had read. Then I accept your condition, Empress. She took his hand. His skin was warmer than she expected, his grip gentle but certain. Ylvana, she said quietly. When we are alone, you may call me Ylvana. 3 months passed like water through a cracked vessel, slowly at first, then all at once. Daniel had learned the rhythms of the palace, which corridors to avoid when Vathis was hunting for excuses to arrest humans, which servants could be trusted, which smiles hid knives. He had learned, too, the rhythms of Ylvana, the way she stiffened before council meetings, the way she relaxed when they walked in her mother's garden, the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. He tried not to think about that last one. The legal review was proceeding. Slowly, painfully, but proceeding. Human advocates had presented testimony. Sytheri academics had been forced to acknowledge human contributions to mathematics, medicine, and engineering. The provisional status designation was crumbling under the weight of evidence. And Vathis was growing desperate. He's blocking the final vote, Ylvana said, pacing her private study. He's convinced 4 council members to demand additional verification procedures. It could take another year. Daniel watched her from his seat by the window. The setting sun caught the silver undertones of her skin, made her look like a living statue. Beautiful and untouchable. Then we go over the council's head, he said. How? Public opinion. The Sytheri people haven't heard the testimony. They don't know what humans have contributed. They only know what they've been told, that we're primitive, violent, beneath notice. Ylvana stopped pacing. You want me to release the testimony publicly? I want you to do more than that. I want you to speak. Speak? Address your people. Not as Empress, but as a person. Tell them what you've learned. Tell them why this matters. Ylvana shook her head. The Sytheri do not, we are not demonstrative. Public emotion is weakness. If I show passion for this cause, they will see it as what? Caring? Being alive? Daniel stood, crossing the room to stand before her. Ylvana, your people worship strength. But they've forgotten that the greatest strength is the courage to feel. You don't understand our culture. I understand that your mother was murdered for trying to change it, and you've spent every day since then pretending to be less than you were just to survive. His voice softened. I understand that you haven't cried for her, not once. Ylvana's composure cracked. Just for an instant. A tremor in her jaw, a brightness in her eyes. If I begin, she whispered, I may not stop. Then don't stop. Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers touched her hand. Grieve for her. Fight for what she believed in. And let me stand beside you when you do. Why? Her voice was barely audible. Why do you care so much about me? You know why. The words hung in the air. Daniel felt his heart pounding against his ribs. He had told himself for months that this was politics, strategy, survival. He had lied. I lost everything once, he said. My daughter. My wife. My faith that the universe could be fair. And then I walked into a throne room and saw a woman fighting alone against an empire, and I thought maybe I could matter again. Not because of what I could do, but because of who I could stand with. Ylvana's hand turned beneath his, her fingers intertwining with his own. Humans, she said. You feel so much, yes. Is it not exhausting? Yes. How do you bear it? Daniel lifted her hand, pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture that transcended species, transcended words. We bear it together, he said. That's the secret. The only secret that matters. Ylvana stared at him. Something was breaking behind her eyes, walls she had built since childhood, defenses she had learned at her mother's knee. If I do this, she whispered. If I speak publicly, if I show them who I truly am, Vathis will move against me, perhaps within hours. I know, I could lose everything. Or you could gain something worth having. Daniel squeezed her hand. An empire that follows you because they believe in you, not because they fear your title. A future where your mother's death meant something, and... He hesitated. Someone who will stand beside you no matter what comes. A single tear traced down Ylvana's silver cheek. The first she had shed in 6 months. Stay with me tonight, she said. Not as an advisor. Not as a political ally. Just... stay. Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. They sat together in the fading light, her head eventually resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. They did not speak. They did not need to. Tomorrow the empire would burn. Tonight, they had each other. The grand broadcast hall had not been used for a direct imperial address in 40 years. Tradition demanded that Sytheri emperors communicate through intermediaries, their words filtered and polished by councils and committees. Ylvana had dismissed tradition. She stood before the holocameras in a simple gown, no crown, no ceremonial armor. Just herself, alone, with an empire watching. Daniel stood in the shadows behind the cameras, his presence a steady warmth she could feel even across the room. My people, she began, and her voice did not waver. I have lied to you, by my silence, by my compliance, by my fear. I have lied. The transmission technicians exchanged glances. Across the Dominion, billions of Sytheri stopped what they were doing. My mother, Empress Ylvana, was murdered by members of our own council. She was killed because she believed in change, because she saw the potential in species we had dismissed as inferior. I have proof, and I have spent 6 months too afraid to share it. She took a breath. I am no longer afraid. The evidence scrolled across screens throughout the empire, documents, recordings, testimonies. Vathis' face appeared, caught in damning confession. Council chambers erupted into chaos that the holocameras captured and broadcast in real time. Ylvana continued. Among those species my mother championed were humans. For 3 years, they have lived under laws that declared them less than people. They could not own property. They could not serve alongside us. They could not love whom they chose. She paused. I have spent the last 3 months working with a human named Daniel Mercer. He challenged me when no Sytheri would. He comforted me when I could not comfort myself. He helped me find the courage to stand here today. She looked directly into the primary camera. Some will say that I have shamed myself by relying on a human. That I have weakened our empire by showing emotion, by admitting doubt, by grieving publicly for my mother. They will say, her voice caught, they will say that loving a human is a scandal. In the shadows, Daniel's breath stopped. They would be right, Ylvana said. It is a scandal. It is a scandal that we ever needed laws to tell us who was worthy of love and who was not. It is a scandal that we measured the value of a being by the number of planets they controlled rather than the depth of their courage. It is a scandal that I, Empress of 900 worlds, was too frightened to hold the hand of the one person who saw me as more than a crown. She lifted her chin. I am ending that scandal. Today, I am signing the Personhood Declaration. Full legal equality for humans and all provisional species within the Dominion. Today, I am ordering the arrest of Lord Vathis and his co-conspirators for the murder of my mother. And today, she turned, extending her hand toward the shadows. Today, I am asking Daniel Mercer to stand beside me. Not as an advisor. Not as a political symbol. As my partner. My equal. My choice. Daniel stepped into the light. The holocamera swung toward him, broadcasting his face to 900 worlds. He saw himself reflected in the screens, small, gray-haired, human. Utterly out of place in the gleaming Sytheri hall. He walked forward anyway. Ylvana took his hand. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes were clear. "This is what my mother died for," she said, her voice carrying across the empire. "Not power. Not territory. The simple revolutionary idea that connection matters more than conquest. That understanding is stronger than fear." She looked at Daniel. "That love does not weaken us. It makes us who we were always meant to be." Daniel lifted her hand to his lips, as he had done in her study, but this time the entire Dominion watched. "I am proud of you," he said quietly. For her ears alone. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I know. So am I." He smiled. "Let's be terrified together." Ylvana laughed, a sound that no Sytheri had heard from their empress, a sound that would be replayed and analyzed and debated for generations. But in that moment she was not an empress. She was simply a woman, holding the hand of a man who had taught her that strength was not the absence of fear. It was feeling the fear and reaching out anyway. The broadcast ended. The empire would never be the same. And in the chaos that followed, the arrests, the celebrations, the protests and the poetry, two figures stood at the center of the storm, hands clasped, hearts open, facing the future they had chosen. Together.